some pictures from press and from how I shape my look. And I'll tell you also how it was inspired. So you clearly see here, I'm also the sculptor. I'm laying here on a bunch of clay. So that actually went into all the sculptures I already made, and I recycled that clay. That's me on the stage. I work also together with La Fille d'Eau that makes custom outfits for me. And when I talk about bringing a Gesamtkunstwerk, I like to shape also the show space and the decor. So I wanted to perform on a car and with smoke. So we do that to make like worlds where you can escape different imaginations. I also work together with dancers because I was trained as a ballerina, and I love that aspect of pop music and pop shows where you also dance and not just bring music on its own. This is from music videos. Yeah, that's just to show my athleticism and the photo shoots I do. Like, I like to be very fierce on stage, as you can see, and just bring a total concept. I work together a lot with these dancers here, and I hope in the future, especially now it's hard to survive with music in COVID times, but I hope in the future to bring a bigger bunch of dancers on stage. Paper Magazine, which is a big one, jumped on me, and that was a great way of breaking through also in New York. This is one of the first pictures we ever did before I actually even did any kind of show or music performance. I wanted to come out with my visual and iconic identity, and that drew people to the music space. And I'm still very happy that I handled it like that. So here working with the dancers, edgy outfits. That was on Pukkelpop, where I also performed. On stage is the best place on earth for me. This was from the recent piece I was asked to participate in as Dolly, and was for the Flemish Opera. And that also got amazing reviews. So that was for me great also to literally be in an opera piece, and you know, my whole idea of the Gesamtkunstwerk really took shape there in an ideal way. And the setting was amazing, the decor. So that's from my song Eat Me, where the lyrics were inspired by poetry by Edgar Allan Poe. So I love to work with literature. And the poem I used was the favorite poem of me and my husband. So I always try to use elements from my personal life. Here is the battle heroine, Dolly. So I made this artwork for the single Kusje and the video that you've seen, where I show that I'm battling, but also it was inspired by pulp, and I don't know if you've heard of Heavy Metal magazine, where they have these kind of drawings and cartoons. I'm also a manga drawer. I'll show you later on images from that. And I'm at the moment making a hentai manga drawing project and book about Dolly and about a whole futuristic story. So here, that's from the video that you've seen. And here, that's me at work in my art studio. I literally am also just Dolly in the studio. Here I'm posing with one of my sculptures that I call alien bodies, because they are literally inspired by my own body experience. They are not a copy of my body, but about a copy of how I experience the forces in my body. That's how the sculpture looks like. I love to work with car paint. I think that's a very confusing and alienating sort of top layer that makes the sculpture very futuristic. And that's another one where you can't really see, but here there is a little baby on this monstrous body. And this sculpture represents my experience of giving birth to my daughter. I'm here at work with clay because that's my main tool. Before I'm casting the sculpture, I work with clay and modeling it. It's one of the most favorite things to do because you have total freedom there. And this sculpture is growing. You can see it here already, and there's going to be a third body connected to it. And this is one that represents the saying goodbye to my husband and the moment of letting him go. So all these things seep in through my art. So this is from the Dolly manga that I'm making. By the way, I make this art, or I show myself here as under the moniker Stripper Angel. That's my art persona, but it's connected to Dolly. It's just one. So it's for the Stripper Angel manga book. So yeah, I'm fully at work on that. It takes time, of course, because it's all hand drawn. That's me here posing with some of the manga drawings. Yes, and that brings me to one of my big inspirations is Grace Jones, of course, in the way I shape and look myself. Intentionally, that was not the first case, but I've always admired the way she also blows up walls about how a woman should look like, and she's just a very unconventional, strong performer. And even at her age, and that's very inspiring to me, she's still doing it and also using her body and using the pop show as a full art show. So that's also one of the first pictures clearly inspired by Grace. Here as well. Fashion is a big aspect of being Dolly as well, as you know, when you have a body that you can ornament and decorate, you have to use cool things. So I like to work together with fashion designers as well and stylists, or actually I'm just styling all the time myself, because being Dolly full time means that in the day I also look like Dolly. So I also need to wear stuff that represents me. David Bowie, here, this was for a show that I was asked to do for the Film Festival of Ghent, where they were celebrating the birthday of the movie Alien by Ridley Scott. And they asked me to be the alien. And so I painted myself in silver, and that was very Ziggy Stardust moment. I also brought out a collection of t-shirts, and Rinus van der Velde was my great friend, and I thought he looked so great, and I asked him to model in the campaign, so he did. It was great, and I also was posing in his, or we did the shoot in his art studio, so we were fusing art and fashion also. And that's something very exciting to me too. And this is just some snippets from press that I received. Yeah, I think that's a little bit the different. Let me return back to the other screen here. Clicking on the camera. So I hope I'm visible again. So that's just in a quick way showing you a little bit the different things that I do, which is a lot, I know. And also being a mommy is not easy, but difficult is also possible, and that's also what Dolly represents. So I'll dig into it now a little bit, like why Dolly Bing Bing can be called a Gesamtkunstwerk of the future, and how does that relate to this topic of, you know, inclusivity. But in a broader sense, this topic is about breaking boundaries and is about fusing things that are usually being labeled or being held outside of something that defines itself. So I think, this vision of the Gesamtkunstwerk for me is really an expression of a new future era, where the digital space can also blend with the real, the raw, the body experiencing performances. I call Dolly often a cybersexual fantasy. Cyber means digital because, you know, the space where I'm also being seen and being experienced is online, especially now. We all know the virus pushes us into the digital world. So I was already doing that a long time, Since birth of my daughter, I was teaching online fitness and dance stuff already. Like people do it now all the time, but I did that years back ago. So for me, I already discovered that the power of that space where you can show yourself in a totality that you're in full control of. But at the same time, I always aimed at sort of fusing that with the rawness where it all comes from, because everything I do is not a fiction. It comes from my real life, and my body is very roughly and rawly made, and the way I make my sculptures is just literally being with your hands in the clay and just almost being confronted with the full basic principles of what it is to create, or what it is to have things being born in your bare hands, have life be there in its gravity, in its limitations. So the Gesamt I represent, which is a word, a German word for the total or the totality or the unity, I want to show that the differentiations people make between the digital and the real, or the synthetic and the organic, or between the cultivated and the cultural and more the primitive natural, that these things, they come together and are just a powerful unity. And on a bigger scale, I see it also like my life or my ethics are blending or are fused with my aesthetics. And this comes from my PhD and my philosophical research, where I started questioning things like, okay, we live in this world where we feel super divided. I'm a divided being. How can we be more whole? How can we be more healthy and at one with ourselves and with society and with other people and with nature? And thinking about that question, it is a very old question. And especially in the 18th century, philosophers like Schiller, Kant, and all kinds of Enlightenment thinkers, of course, Rousseau, and a little bit later on, Goethe, who is the main inspiration actually for my PhD, they were really concerned about these things. And they were looking at the Greeks, like the ancient Greeks. What did they do? Because they seem to be so in harmony with themselves, being athletes, being philosophers. So that is also very strongly a core base influence on being Dolly. Like I train fully naked, like the Greeks. And I just was inspired by what Nietzsche highlighted very much as the oppositions between Apollo and Dionysos, and how both of them need to be fused in order to have art happen. Like Dionysos is the god, stands for wine, for being drunk, for being chaotic, for losing oneself, for actually ripping oneself apart, while Apollo stands for rules, for measure, for harmony, for balance, for proportions. What art is all about. But good art, says Nietzsche, is fusing the two, having the wild force, the lust of life from Dionysos, being channeled and channelized in the harmony and balance and the measures of Apollo. So that's something what is for me a Gesamt, a good Gesamt. In my PhD, I was questioning how can people do that with their own lives? So in order to sort of express that vision, I literally wanted to do in my PhD what I was thinking about. So I descended in time and used the imaginary space or the bubble that is literature as a place where things could happen. I could meet Goethe in real life. I could meet Schiller and Kant. So we had conversations.